Hello and welcome to SaltWire today for Monday, November 7th. I'm your host, Kate Walker. One woman from HRM is sharing her story as a victim of sex trafficking and how she survived addiction, homelessness, and even suicide attempts. Gwendolyn Brown says her trust was violated when she was just 7 years old, and by 15, she had experienced being sex trafficked. The trauma led to addictions with crack cocaine and alcohol, moving from hotel to hotel.
It's through my trauma that has ignited the passion in me to open an organization called Empowerment for Hope.
Through her own lived experience, Brown says she hopes to bring awareness and education to her organization, Empowerment for Hope. She hopes to help others break the cycle of abuse, violence, and trauma in families. And she also hopes to break the silence around sex trafficking.
How many of us have children in junior high, high school, and university? And then I have to ask, how many of us really know if our child has ever been touched by Aunt Susie, Uncle Bob, or if our children in schools, in high school, junior high, or even university have been coerced, lured, groomed, manipulated into sex trafficking. And the simple fact that any parent has to stop and think, then we need to be educated on the dangers of sex trafficking in our cities and in our province.
Brown has already made partnerships with multiple organizations, including the East Preston Family Resource Center. She'll reach the community through counseling and her outreach work through Word in Action Ministries. Brown says she hopes her testimony and her recovery process will reach others who have gone through similar situations and ultimately help youth avoid going through what she did. Police are investigating a shooting in Dartmouth last night. Around 8:40, police say they were called after gunfire in the area of Brookside Avenue in Dartmouth. A home and a parked vehicle in the area were struck by bullets. Officers found a 22-year-old man in the area who had been shot. He was taken to hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. Investigators say they don't believe this was a random incident, and there's no word on any suspects. Those in the Atlantic region will be able to catch a view of a total lunar eclipse tomorrow morning. It's expected to be red-orange in color and seen before the sun rises.
So a total lunar eclipse happens when the Earth blocks the sunlight that would usually be getting to the moon. So the moon doesn't produce its own light, it just reflects the sunlight from the sun in our solar system. And when the Earth is passing by, when it's in just the right configuration, the Earth is actually going to block all of that sunlight, so the Earth's shadow is going to be landing on the moon, and that's how this lunar eclipse is happening.
Field says it's exciting for her and the general public because all you need is your eyes, no fancy telescope required.
So the best time to view the total lunar eclipse tomorrow morning is going to be 6:15 a.m. or after until the moon sets. So the moon is going to be really low on the west-northwest horizon. It'll be about 5 degrees above the horizon, which is about the size of your fist if you hold it out at arm's length. That's about 5 degrees on the sky. So you'll need a clear view of the western horizon.
And the next total lunar eclipse is not expected until 2025. Hundreds of trees lost their lives to Hurricane Fiona, some that have been around for centuries. One in particular in the Hemlock Ravine was inspected by a former Dow professor and tree scholar who took us through its history and what happens next. SaltWire's John DeMont has the details.
Lots of trees came down during Hurricane Fiona. But when a Halifax councillor told Peter Dunker that a big one came down in the Hemlock Ravine Nature Park, he had to have a look. The Dalhousie University scholar of the forest loves to walk on those trails, and one magnificent tree, a hemlock, always caught his eye there. Dunker knew it was old, but it took some detective work to determine just how old.
So very roughly speaking, the average size width of the rings was 1 millimeter. And if I have 500 millimeters of diameter, then in very rough terms, this tree could be 500 years old. I suspect it's a little younger than that.
Dunker takes the long view in things. For him, an old tree falling in the forest is the most natural thing in the world.
It will feed so much insect and fungal so many insect and fungal species. During the next decades, it may hollow out a bit, so it can become a spot where animals may den, who knows.
I'm John DeMont in Halifax for the SaltWire Network.
Time now for a glimpse of today's Thinking Out Loud with Sheldon McLeod. Today, Sheldon is speaking with Aaron Trafford about a series ahead of Remembrance Day that features Captain Jen Casey of the aerobatic team, the Snowbirds.
Tell me about why she has to be or is a part of this project that you have for Remembrance Week.
Yeah, so I'll back up a little bit and just say that the show that's dropping this week is a special series. It's a 4-part series. We're working with the Royal Canadian Air Force Foundation, and they are ramping up to celebrating 100 years of the Royal Canadian Air Force, which will happen in 2024. So they came to us and they said, we've got this crazy idea about digging in and telling stories of Canadian aeronautic and aviation history, of what's going on currently, and then of the dreamers and the innovation and Canada's role in that. And how can we do that in podcast form? So of course, DT and I kind of jumped on this and said, there's tons of stuff we can do. So we started with this 4-part series, and very quickly, the lens turns to things like Amelia Earhart. It turns to things like the first episode we dropped today about William Barker, who is Canada's most celebrated, decorated, rather not celebrated. He is the most decorated, but not celebrated serviceman. And I learned so much. And then all of a sudden, you got to talk about the Snowbirds, and then Jen comes up.
And for Sheldon's full conversation, head to the opinion section of saltwire.com. Time now for the Atlantic Sports Wire, presented by Scott Squires.
Joey Haddad is the coach of the Sydney Mitsubishi Rush, part of the Nova Scotia U18 Major Hockey League. Joey, welcome to the Atlantic Sports Wire. How are you enjoying the head coaching gig?
Scott, thanks for having me. The new coaching position's going well. Definitely an experience to kind of be on the other side of the game. But having a lot of fun.
You're a hometown guy from Sydney. You played your major junior part of it, at least, with the Cape Breton Eagles. How does it feel to be back home coaching?
I was looking forward to being home, and that was part of the decision to call it a career, and to get a job like this, to stay involved with the sport, and then a fresh new experience of being on the other side of things. More of the management role. It's been great, and I think to add that hometown touch is pretty special.
The next game for Coach Haddad and the Rush will be a Cape Breton rivalry game as they take on the Cape Breton West Islanders this Thursday, 7 p.m. on the road at the Al MacInnis Sports Centre. In Halifax, I'm Scott Squires for the Atlantic Sports Wire.
Thank you, Scott. On to weather now to see what's coming up in the forecast. We're going to check in now with our weather specialist, Alistair Alders.
Thanks, Kate. Well, what an amazing start to November. Temperatures were well above normal. We had record-breaking highs over the weekend, certainly an unusual heat in November. And we are heading back to reality, a strong cold front moving through, so a big temperature tumble is on the way. This evening it will be 15 degrees. We'll have partly cloudy skies and a northwest wind of 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. But we're down to 7 degrees waking up on Tuesday morning with a mix of sun and cloud and a northwest wind of 40, 50, up to maybe even 60 kilometers per hour. And that wind will persist throughout the day. And with the trailing trough behind the cold front, I do think we'll see more clouds than sunshine tomorrow afternoon, with the temperature actually tumbling down a bit from 7 in the morning, likely to around 6 or 5 degrees by the mid to late afternoon. The good news in the forecast is there is lots of sunshine. Temperatures do stay near or just below seasonal. The next rain system I'm watching is this weekend, likely very wet and windy. There could be some tropical moisture in this system, so I'll be keeping a very close eye on that. Kate.
Thank you, Alistair. That's all for now. For more extended video and full online articles, stay tuned to saltwire.com. And you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at SaltWire Today. I'm your host, Kate Walker. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.